Doing about Shelby.
I heard from her a week or two ago that I can send her an email.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we'll call to order. And bring on, we'll see, keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Suppose we have anybody from the public?
No.
Right, good consent agenda, which the August 24 draft minutes and the monthly financial update. Any comments on any of this?
I think from, oh, I guess, so Christine's actually out sick right now, so she'll not be attending, but we're looking good financially. It's a much bigger budget this year for staff. But we're spending at a pretty conservative clip thus far, but I think it'll obviously ramp up with as the more strategic planning stuff gets even more in swing and the event. So it'll be good tomorrow.
There was one highlighted blank in the minutes attributed to me, so whoever does the minutes can speak.
All right. Yeah, I'll let Christian know.
So we need to approve that?
We approve? Yeah, we approve. Yes. So we have a motion to approve the consent. Well, with that amended. Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Approved. And we're already at this step.
That's a lot.
The strategic plan is the next item.
Yeah.
There's a couple of sub items here, so if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So thanks to, I guess, first of all, I thank RHP, our esteemed committee chairs, for meeting with myself and some of the other regional housing partnership members. I just want to talk quickly about kind of where we landed at the end of these meetings, because I think it's sort of going to guide what staff will be doing over the next few months until January. But I guess first of all, we decided for both committees that we'll be meeting quarterly, sort of mimic the RHP into not, that's what folks seem to want. And so for the data committee, we were really talking through these three sort of big features or big resources that we want to design. And that's this affordable housing toolkit. And so we were thinking about, what should that include? Definitions of affordable housing, HUD definitions, definitions of different costs, other affordable housing need to know definitions that you'd be able to take and then understand a lot of what's being put out there locally around the policies, including different types of affordability strategies, so like inclusionary zoning, ADUs, land banks, et cetera, and case studies. And we talked pretty extensively about the different types of case studies we want to engage to ensure that there's both rural and urban representations. That could be, I think we were talking a little bit at the meeting about the Dillon rule and how that's, we want to make sure that there's some Virginia components to it, but also there's a lot to learn nationally. And I won't, go through point by point on each of these, but basically sort of have this thing we want to do, whether it's this toolkit, this grant library, resource library, and dashboard. And what my job over the next month, month and a half, or 2 months, is to kind of come back to that committee with an outline of what these could look like. So what kind of sources of data are we engaging for this kind of dashboard? One of the things we mentioned is leveraging, some of the relationships we have with the realtor community and CAR and being able to potentially source and credit data to them. PHA is a great resource. Housing Forward Virginia has a lot of really good, pretty up-to-date information. And so basically figuring out how to, I'm going to take this raw material that I got from our conversation and bring back sort of like designs. And then we can really start thinking about building it out. So that's like the data part of the so to speak. Does anyone have any questions about that so far? And give me one moment. I got other questions, same question. I'm sure we'll get to the meeting. So. No questions about. I will say one one of the things that internally we've been talking about is, and I know that there are organizations that are represented on the board that have used this, but potentially accessing the VISTA program through Virginia Housing Alliance as a way to add capacity to our housing program here at the EDC, and more specifically these, having someone else help with some of the strategic plans and goals. And that's something we would know about by the end of the year, the calendar year, we then approved to have a VISTA starting in August of 2023. So that might change things if we know we have extra capacity coming in, kind of close to the end of next year. But for now, we're still sort of laying the groundwork because you're all aware that we have 5 years to kind of get from where we are now to where we are.
So one of the things I'm trying to work on from the Charlottesville Association of Realtors perspective is to see if we can get a member, we can get an MLS membership.
Oh, really?
We're doing a little finagle or an arm twisting there, because if that's the case, you will have real-time live stats.
Yeah.
To your finger, instead of asking me or somebody else to go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna try to do that. It may cost us a little bit of money. I'm trying to get it as a freebie, but I'm working my way through that. The struggle is the fact that we're not licensed. That's the struggle. But I'm trying to work that out because that would be very helpful, lifetime stats.
Definitely.
Instead of waiting for somebody to get it.
Yeah, and I think within that specifically, and I can get to this in a little bit, we're talking about how we might be able to leverage this new Virginia housing money as a part of the implementation process, but that's something that will be able to be covered, right? So if you're.
Yeah, I think the licensing things of his.
That's different. But,
so then you just get your license.
yeah.
Right?
Right.
MLS, multiple listing services. Right, so, he was to ask me a question right now about a specific neighborhood or property, I could give you stats and so.
Right.
So,
We just need your login.
yeah. You remember this whole licensing and how I make a living and that whole kind of.
We're not gonna interrupt that.
Okay. I trust you, not so much.
Well, if someone on the team were to get licensed, then it wouldn't be a problem. Or it would be.
Yeah. I'm working on a solution. And hopefully the next meeting I'll be able to report it. I'm trying to twist the law. They want to get back to the community. This is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
The problem is the data is very coveted. Right, and our business is all about data.
Right.
And what they don't want is somebody inside of it screwing the data up.
Totally, and that's so, and again, that kind of speaks to like, once we have a better idea of what we want to present, we could start thinking about MOUs, we could start thinking about ways to protect, whomever we're getting data from and ourselves, and just be able to, accurately attribute information to whomever.
The problem with the quarterly reports that they put out that go to the public, they're anywhere between a month and a half late. Right. In this market, that's it, and then turn it a month. So I'm working on some sort of better way.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can kind of, so yeah, that's sort of where we are, where we left off, and I appreciate, Keith having making time for that meeting. We met at 8 a.m. A lot of people got up early, and we did have, I think, both meetings we had 4 folks attend, 4 out of the 6 people on the committee, so it's pretty good for a first try. Hopefully, getting new people in, but as far as the communications committee, and Margaret, if I miss anything, feel free to jump in, but just what I have here, and what I'm so the same idea applies where I hope to bring back kind of designs or outlines of things, and then really start. I think this will be a little easier to jump once we kind of get buy-in from the committee about what we want to produce. But I guess the first thing that I think I'll actually have done, and it's something is like the annual report for the housing partnership. So I started working on a template where basically we would discuss, maybe have a little bit from the chair, talking about sort of what's been accomplished over last year. But I think it's kind of, we're going to start creating all these new materials. I think it's important to kind of use that document as like a jumping off point, a public facing jumping off point. So the information about some of the housing programs that we can be able to leverage through the RHP, as well as the strategic planning process more broadly. What do we do, who do we engage, and where are we looking to end up with? So that document I'll actually be producing not just the outline of that, but having a physical draft for review of the committee, and then probably with the executive committee. But so yeah, that's one thing I want to kind of caveat that we are doing in full. But everything else, thinking about, you know, defining our audience. So like, who are we creating this education strategy for? Are there ways to do it for multiple audiences, not just the general public, not just stakeholders, but something, resources that can address both and engage both? An audit of past and current outreach activities. So how often are we engaging with stakeholders? We have a really long list on MailChimp of our sort of CDRHP audience. That's like 550 people. Is that list even worth, you know, is it super out of date? Are there old emails, people who moved on? My guess is yes, just judging by when I've used it for the save the date for the event and for the virtual series. There are a lot of bounce backs, a lot of people have no longer work in this place. So thinking about what our current outreach activities consist of, and then trying to create a mechanism for interested folks to sign up easily. Design and creation of a shared calendar of events that will begin January 2023. So once we kind of, the idea would be like a Google Calendar with color-coded events for each locality, maybe a color for community events, but thinking about what the sources of inputs for that be. So like, obviously planning commission meetings, board of supervisors meetings, site plan meetings, but also, you know, media architecture school has lectures occasionally that bring in scholars and experts. You know, there's a variety of car events, there's a variety, and obviously our events, variety of different things that we want to be able to put into one place for the community. Newsletter or blog post, we didn't really decide what it would be. One of those things, and then if it's going to be monthly or quarterly with recaps of meetings, events, and advertising of these new resources that we're going to continue to develop. And then a schedule of presentations from so sort of the vice chair and chair, some sort of presentation run, whether that be immediately before, immediately after an election, which is one of the things that was brought up in our committee, that you now have these new folks that are now being appointed to this board or have to appoint someone to this board. They should, you know what the RHP does and is. So that is kind of the communications work plan. So by our meeting, I think is the second week of January, I'll have this, you know, annual report drafted, but also hopefully have a good idea of the rest of the stuff. So yeah, that's the current sort of state of play with the strategic planning stuff. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of where everyone sort of where the executive committee fits in. That's more of this membership bylaw review, and we'd be happy to. Oh, great. Hey, Glenn. Hey, Gretchen. Sorry about any technical difficulties.
Okay.
So yeah, does anyone have any questions about that?
You mentioned it was 4 or 6 for the data. What was that?
I think it was 4. I think it was 3 or 4 people. Maybe there were. Actually, there might have been more at the data committee. I have the minutes on my desk.
But attendance was not.
No.
We voluntold people.
There was a majority
So I was curious
Yes.
how it doesn't seem like there was any negative.
I had people say that they were gonna come, who didn't end up showing up.
Yeah.
We had 3 people there,
That's
well,
right.
not including you.
Right, yes,
Four,
that's
including you.
maybe 4, I include myself.
Right.
I think the only part that I think was, you know, making sure that people, it's something that Christine and I talked about afterwards, is like, this group especially, and obviously staff, have been engaged with the strategic planning process for a year, and going into that meeting, like, kind of having to catch people up who only engage with this quarterly, that took a little bit of time, less so at the data committee, but more so, especially in the communications committee, where we're thinking about advertising what we've done.
Mhm.
So that, I think that would lessen, you know, obviously, this is I think when we talked about telling people, this was a strategy to engage folks more. And I think also at our January meetings, we're probably going to think about who we can invite to be on these committees as well. I know that's something we talked about, and, you know, some potentially commissioners, TJPC commissioners, you know, that kind of thing. So, but I think both committees were able to produce a really good set of work orders for me. I think, like, I'll be able to, I think it's not a little, but it's not too much, and I think once we start thinking about more concretely these things, it'll be a little bit different. And, but for right now, I think we're in a good place of setting them all up and kind of like pumping up the pool or whatever, whatever we're going to use. Play with pool or float or something, but we just started. That is the good.
You did a great job on the end.
What?
You did a good job.
Thank you.
on the end.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are those talks that we had scheduled before, are those kind of part of the communications team, or is it kind of a separate role with those?
Yeah, it's a good question, and this is really the only area I think that what we're doing, or new stuff we're doing, kind of rubs up against what we've previously been doing. Because right now, the events committee is less that and more of like a summit. It's just talking about this one event. But I think we're planning on having those in 2023 after the summit for sure. It's just, yeah, that'll be something we'll probably think more about after hopefully this event as well. You know, but that's a good point. I mean, I think people really enjoyed it. And they were great events. You know, I think that's something that even at post-COVID, you know, people like having something virtual to attend in the middle of the day. You know, 12 to 1 is usually open-ish for folks. So.
Any other items on the committee?
That's it.
Virginia Housing Grant information.
Yeah, so I attached, it's kind of I mean, I didn't really expect anyone to go through this application or the manual of the fine-tooth comb. Long story short is there's money on the table for us to use to support these implementation efforts. And so there are a variety, we thought initially when we were engaging with Virginia Housing that, okay, we have this land bank feasibility study that we want to do, but probably won't be going on for another year or two. We kind of at first thought that was where that pot of money would have to go, but that's actually not the case. There's I forget the name of the grant that would support that, but it's independent of this capacity building grant that we use to fund the consultants. So now we're in a position where we can begin to think about what we want to do with that money, whether we want it to be like sponsorship for some of these tools that they would pay for staff time or access to information or data. One idea we had is, you know, using it to hire consultants to help us with this membership and bylaw review to kind of have outside external folks that are engaged with the community, like sort of neutrality, I guess was the idea with that. And then even, you know, with being able to help fund, if we think about, you know, networking events or sort of in-person events that are different than what we're thinking about holding, that's something that could also be funded with this money. So I wanted to just put that on the community's radar just to, I think right now we're probably at a place where we don't know what we need it for yet, because, you know, I haven't started really in earnest doing this. I mean, I started a little bit, but since those committee meetings, they're only, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I think it's important to remember that we have money that we can access that. And I've had a few conversations with the grant officers at Virginia Housing, and it's a pretty easy application once we've already closed out this initial strategic planning application, so it's not something that we really struggle to get. I don't know the exact amount of money, but I think probably is in that same, you know, 10,000-ish, 20,000-ish range, kind of like the back end. But yeah, I mean, Virginia Housing, I think, is always a great place to get money. And I think, you know, depending on I think that would be a decision for the executive committee to decide how that money should be spent. But I just wanted to put that on folks' radar and see if I can answer any questions that you have right now. But
Questions?
Mine was how much?
yeah, that's the range if I remember.
So too early to know what to use it for. what we could even.
Yeah,
need to use.
I think we know we could use it. I mean, I think for most of the things we've established as goals are eligible costs.
Yeah.
I think the next item we're going to talk about, like this membership and bylaws review, and think about, having some kind of workshop for the executive committee. I think that might be a good, depending on how that goes, depending on how comfortable we feel with the results, that might be something where we go, okay, maybe this isn't something that the executive committee can do. I'm not saying that's what will happen, but that is a hypothetical that a way we would know. Yeah, so
Nice to have.
yeah, it is.
Some sponsorships independent.
Say it again.
Some sponsorships independent.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I saw a note pop up about trouble hearing us, so we may just need to be, there's
Okay.
a few of us in the room, we might have to talk like there's more of us in the room. Colette, can you hear me okay? So just directing, I guess, at the owls. Great. Any other?
No, that's it. That's it for that.
So the next one is the membership bylaw review. So this is of the committee meetings, is the one that we said the executive committee would be the committee to do this one. So we set up the data committee, we set up the communications committee, but the executive committee could handle this one. To piggyback on what Ian mentioned, I feel like the bylaws review can be done by this group, that it may be useful to have the extra help with the membership. Have the outside eye. I'm not saying we wouldn't be involved, but we can potentially use the consultants as a way to help us explore, do we have the right people at the table, do we need some turnover, do we need some different people? I think it could be helpful to have that analysis.
Yeah.
If we decide to go that way. I don't think we need a consultant to help us do a bylaw review. Now, the bylaw review, we talked about, we just have to get the bylaws to everybody. I haven't read them myself in a while, so we just need to read them. I can tell you one of the things right off that we may have to look at is the leadership and the term limits that we put on leadership, because we've already basically thrown those out the window for our first couple of years. So that's one where we should have some conversation of, do we want to change that to be a little bit more not advantageous, amenable to what the will of whatever the current executive committee is, to allow for how leadership structure is set up, and of course, looking at everything else. It was pretty boilerplate when we came up with those. I remember working with Christine and Chip, get a standard set of bylaws, put them in place, and go, all right, let's do this. But now that we have some years behind us, we can probably look at it with an eye to go, does this make sense for our body?
Yeah.
So step one, though, is just getting those bylaws to everybody, starting to do the review, and then we just have to schedule time on our agenda to do the work, where we come in and go, all right, let's just work through this and see what we think.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing that this kind of ties into when that meeting would happen in November, because this always happens for the last 2 meetings of the year are like the week of Thanksgiving and then the week of Christmas. So that would be something where we could use a doodle poll or something to find a date for the executive committee to meet in November with the stated goal of reviewing these bylaws. And maybe this is something that we can, I think I have to read them again, or I talked to David and Christine, but like maybe this is something where, virtual participation, if there's no consent agenda, it's something, or I don't know, there's some way to make it more accommodating for members. I think in person obviously works too, but it just depends on, maybe we can fill that into the poll, like I can come virtually, I can come, because I understand.
Yeah, I just think if we're gonna be thumbing through bylaws, I think we all need to be.
Okay, fair enough.
That's my opinion. I think, that should be an in-person meeting, I think.
Well, as opposed to pulling the plug on the November meeting and then having our quarterly meeting, which we had to find a different date.
Right.
We did talk about, the chair, vice chair talked, and Ian talked about having a November date specifically as a work session for the bylaws, so that we can get going on it. I don't think it's going to take multiple meetings to do this. It's probably just going to take that one meeting. But it would be nice to just have that done. Then if we pull in the other consultants for the membership piece, because the membership is tied to the bylaws. The bylaws dictate who can be members.
Right.
But if the structure's in place, we can always revisit the bylaws if the consultant work informs us to do so, but I don't want to wait until
No,
a year to get the rest of the bylaw stuff figured out.
Do we have a consultant in mind?
there's a list that's, the eligible, Virginia housing consultants.
I actually think Sparky might be.
Yeah, I mean, that-
with that portion of it.
Why not? They already know.
Well, I was thinking they were available, so.
They're definitely available for sure.
I think it's a good fit, they already went through what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
and-
They're familiar with the context we're working in. Yeah.
They know us. They may not want to, but they know us.
Well, and the thinking.
Well, the key is that they know who's not at the table.
Well, I think they've done, I think they've done enough of conversation with the community on the strategic plan. They probably can answer that pretty quickly who's not at the table.
Well, pretty quickly, should be very important, so.
So I guess the question is, do we want to then replace the November meeting, so not having what we're doing now, a regular meeting, just have this work session?
I mean, if we have a regular meeting, if there's any small items,
Yeah,
or
okay.
minutes or something we need to approve, we can always just take care of that.
Yeah.
But the idea being that the November meeting is really about the bylaw work. For sure. And we don't need to add on any other topics besides that.
What day were we thinking of?
We didn't, the unique part of this November is there is a fifth Wednesday, the 30th is a Wednesday. So the fourth Wednesday would be the day before Thanksgiving, which I can't imagine anybody, the availability there would be problematic, but the 30th could kind of fall in line with we're used to meeting on the last Wednesday of the month, and it adds an extra opportunity in for probably what would be about a 90-minute. Yeah, I can't imagine us taking more time than what our normal meeting time is scheduled for.
Not if we get the bylaws out,
Yeah, right.
plenty of time to,
Well, we already have them in this packet.
Yeah, and just reiterate that that's the focus, so, you know.
Oh, that's right, we did send them out.
did they?
That was it.
They're in this packet.
I had trouble finding the packet when I was looking for it today.
Yeah, it should be in the invitation.
It's okay.
I don't know.
Really?
I had to find the email.
I missed that.
I think it would be helpful, if staff, yourself and Christine, might give a couple of bullet points for the meeting. These are some of our concerns.
Okay.
At least from staff's perspective,
Okay.
before this November meeting, that might be helpful to, help us form some. Unless everybody thinks that's not a good idea.
Yeah, that's what I was actually looking for, is really like, are we looking at every single item on the bylaws, or are we looking at specific, I know we're looking at membership. Are we looking at any specific things, or are we looking at everything?
I took executive board membership, terms,
Election, whether we have to be here physically, I think that's a law. So, I don't think we can change that.
Well, I need to get some clarification on that with, like, Ruth, or no.
It falls under what the TJPDC.
Yeah, the data
Right,
understanding,
and
because
then
that's,
as a public organization, then you, or, we have public meetings.
right,
That you can show up, it has to have a physical form, but you could have, I think, 2 times, I'm on the school board, so that's why.
right. I think there's also flexibility in terms of like, within it, I think you're just allowed virtual participation now without having to have like there's like written in the bylaws, I think, is like this whole, you have to, indicate why, like there's certain things that we don't really, follow very
Our
closely.
current, yes, the current bylaws, the electronic piece was built out of pre-pandemic.
Exactly. So that's
one area.
Okay.
But the TJPDC's policy on it will end up being our policy. We're not gonna be able to go against the grain on what the TJPDC.
We're a committee of that organization.
So that's not really one that's up for discussion, that just
Yeah.
has to be updated in the policy. Good, any other questions or discussion on that item? Since there's so few of us, does November 30 look like an option for people? Elect November 30?
Same time.
Maybe same time, just for
Yeah, what time?
3:30?
3:30?
o'clock to 3:30, it'd be the same time.
Yeah, I've got a 4 o'clock that I can't miss that day. I'm free from noon until 3:30.
So could we do 2 to 3:30, 2 o'clock to 3:30?
Yeah.
And then if you need to scoot early, we probably won't be here at 3:30.
I can do that.
Good, that's easy.
Great, that's way easier than doable.
That was a doable.
That was doable.
Doodling. Oh, so the deadline, we'll have this, I think we'll have it done by we can update the full partnership at the December meeting.
So quick question, so are we hoping to have input or expertise from consultants post that meeting or before that meeting?
Post.
Okay.
For membership.
For membership, yeah. Because there's a whole, we have to, we still have to apply.
Sure,
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah, but I say that, it's not that hard, but it's, it took a little bit to get the strategic planning money,
For sure.
so.
Sorry, so that means we're not going to meet on Wednesday, the 23rd.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless you'd like to, but I'll be
No.
preparing my stuffing and things like that.
No, I'll be doing, baking pies and things.
All right. So we'll move to the next item, which is new business, number 5, possible town hall discussion, Delegate Hudson. So I don't know if y'all remember, but last year, around this legislative time when elected bodies are meeting, I floated the idea of us doing something related to our state legislators. Well, it happened that I piggybacked onto a meeting with Delegate Hudson, floated the idea of her being involved with maybe some sort of town hall on affordable housing topic to be available, and she was very open to that, very interested in that. So I'm just revisiting that to say that I think if it were to happen, it would have to happen by the end of the year, because the session starts and then she'll be off the radar for 2 or 3 months. As I was coming today, I was thinking maybe this gets wrapped into our full partnership meeting somehow, since we have to find a date and time for that anyway. Maybe we could wrap in some participation by Delegate Hudson and then discuss if we want to invite in any other legislators to be a part of it. But the idea was just to have a conversation with them where partnership members could come with some questions and we just talk about housing and hear what they have to say at the state level. And make it immediate. I'm just thinking it might be better off in the evening, maybe not, I don't know. If it's just Delegate Hudson, that'll be easier to wrangle schedule-wise. As soon as we start adding others, it'll complicate it. But it could be a nice way to say, okay, we do, if it's just one of the legislators, then maybe 3 months later, another legislator has to come in and it becomes a regular part of the stuff around the partnership meetings. I don't know. But the fact that she was interested in doing that and having that, or giving time for that, I thought was a good thing. So maybe take advantage of that before the new year. So I'm floating that as an idea. Any thoughts or questions on it are appreciated.
So to me, a town hall is a public meeting. This is not a town hall.
No, I think it would be town hall in the sense that we could, obviously we want people to listen in and attend. I don't know if it's a town hall like we're taking questions from everybody. I was hoping it was more of a discussion of the partnership with, so how it works at the, so when we meet with our delegates at the Board of Supervisors, they'll come in and sit down as a meeting, and we have it back and forth. So my thought would be it would be a similar thing, but with our partnership members. And then the public, just like we can at a board meeting, can listen in and pay attention.
But they can't ask questions.
So they would be asking questions. Or we could maybe open up, have a 15-minute where they could electronically submit some things, and we have somebody that can pick relevant questions. But no, the thought here was not necessarily to host a town hall and then allow whoever shows up to ask. It would be more of the partnership getting to have some time as a body advocating and asking questions relevant to
That idea, I think, is great. I think mixing public town hall, even with that idea, is elusive.
Yeah, I think calling it a town hall is just mine. But today I was thinking more of a partnership meeting, and we scheduled an agenda item with the delegate then it's more, oh, we get a chance to have our legislative meeting with that delegate and talk about, you know, Keith representing the area he's from, and some of the other public members. I mean, could be an interesting mix of questions that come from our partnership, and could give some value to some attendance for that meeting, to help make sure we keep people involved.
Very much so.
I think they always ask questions at the second, the public comment portion.
Yeah, I don't want to preclude, I mean, if something comes in, I think that'll be fine, but yeah, it's not necessarily hosting a town hall like I go out and do a budget town hall. So,
I think it's great.
but with that would tie into the schedule, so we might not be able to name a date, because we'd have to work with her on her availability.
Yeah, I can reach out to her, and then I think depending on her schedule, it would be more clear whether or not it'd be an evening thing or a day thing. You know, we were thinking about having rescheduled the December meeting to the first 2 weeks of December anyway, because again, it's like the day after Christmas or something, right now, so, yeah, as long as you guys are open to potentially being in the evening, I think that'd be exciting anyway. If it's more focused, if it's like the primary goal of it, kind of like this November meeting, the primary goals of bylaws, and the primary feature of this is this conversation with Delegate Hudson. And, you know, of course, we could invite, you know, Senator Deeds as well, if we want to maybe just do our state, team.
Well, it's difficult because of who the current representatives are, and if you wanted to do the whole region, it could.
Yeah, so maybe we do one at a time.
But I started
Just
thinking
looking at
that,
who
more, I
might-
was like, oh, if we did one, and then once or twice a year.
Yeah, I like that.
Plus, it's gonna change, isn't it?
Good.
Because
Neither-
the districts don't all change.
Yeah. Neither of these seats are up this year, but
Well,
yeah.
I'm just looking at, you know, Warren Nelson and
No,
we are covered by two different Republicans that need change, that probably won't change party, but,
Right.
you know, it's.
You that emailed me and told me to reach out with the state of dates to Sally, who also is my professor, so I know her sort of okay well, so I have her information, I can talk to her.
It may be helpful if she had some dates open,
Right.
and we go to the full body and try to find that date and time, that could kind of drive, hey, we have this opportunity, here are the 3 dates, what works best for everybody, maybe that helps us get a date and time on the books.
That's what I was thinking about doing, yep.
I'm guessing partnership, get them attendance during the day, in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So if she's available
Which is
in
probably,
the afternoon, then that would be preferable, not to preclude, and maybe that's what she needs.
So yeah, I'll ask her for a few, times and dates.
and yes, in the lead up to the session, you need to get, like, that's our
Yeah,
next week.
I can do that this week.
Because I'm sure her calendar's starting to really book out with those type of things leading up to January.
She does run space in here too, so maybe,
Yeah, that's right.
it's not hard for her to do.
Maybe she's up there right now, maybe we.
Yeah, we just barge in.
We can do a Google poll. Well, awesome, that's good, I think there's some potential there. The save the date that Ian was mentioning was, in that same conversation, I've been pitching to people the date of our housing come home to the summit, so, she's aware of that, and we make sure we send a save the date to her as well. To participate or
Is that true to all elected?
I'm gonna send the-
6
yeah.
jurisdictions.
Yeah, and although I sent it just to our list that we talked about earlier, it should include most elected officials, but for the actual registration, I'll ensure that everyone is invited, to attend, but this is just the first pass, I guess.
I think once we get the date settled, we give the partnership, they know that they're gonna be the ones asking the question, you know, just a heads up, hey, come prepared with some. Because I don't recall us really having that many conversations about how the state level stuff impacts what we do locally, regionally, beyond like land use or things that drive those decisions.
One thing, right, I mean, that's the big one. It's come up a lot, funding for the state housing trust fund, that type of thing. But I think I don't know the best way to host this, if it should be just completely open-ended, or if it makes sense to be intentional with certain questions or, areas of.
I'm thinking the same line, should we solicit from the whole
Yeah.
partnership themes,
Yeah.
ideas, subjects and see if we can distill it into something more manageable in a time-specific agenda.
So I'm good with all that. I didn't get that far ahead of my thinking about it. You're right, having some good, that'll be appreciated by Delegate Hudson, but also.
The not-for-profits will have perspectives, the jurisdictions might have perspectives.
Maybe we could even ask.
Maybe it's organized around the 4 legs, who knows, but, I think you get people to submit themes or subjects, and then we can kind of try to structure it from there.
Or even questions that they would
Well,
like to
all of
ask.
those things can come in question. She might even appreciate that. We don't need to try to get her off guard, we can just do that.
I was just gonna say, I think regionalism would be something that we should talk about too. Because she has to work with her colleagues as well on a regional issue. That's what we're trying to achieve. Space energy there.
How many delegates are in
Yeah,
our region?
Of the region, there's currently in Albemarle, there's what, 4?
There's enough.
That's just Albemarle.
Yeah.
There's 4.
But they're not the same boundaries as the counties, right? Yeah, they stagger.
Well,
Most of Charlottesville is in one region.
Charlottesville is, but the county is.
Yeah, I could-
and then before, then you start getting slice and dice into that.
And
Yeah.
Wilson's at least 2.
And the lines are changing a little bit.
And that's just development. We've got 2 cents, 3 cents. 2 cents.
Which they don't know this immediately.
Well, I think that just took care of number 6 too.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I forgot to put this on the agenda, but the sympathy card, so I don't know if you all heard, but one of our board members recently passed away. She had RHP of leukemia. So one of the things we're thinking about is having you all sign a card, and we're thinking about getting some flowers to send to really tragic news. I think it was about 2.5 weeks ago, and you know where that.
You might want to check, I don't think they want flowers.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
they want a donation in lieu of, I would, I suggest you reach out to, Brown County admin. Nursing a headache, I can't remember our county administrator's name.
Eric Dahl.
Thank you, Eric. So I reached out to Eric. If I recall, it was a donation to some charity in lieu of flowers.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, so.
All right, moving right along. The round table is up next, towards the end of our meeting. Colette is our online. You want to kick us off with the round table update? Or some pie recipes before Thanksgiving?
Not a whole lot new here. We're kind of just plowing through the process on our affordable housing stuff. We expect to put the RFP out shortly to the shortlisted firms. So then we'll go through that process, and after the first of the year, hopefully have a developer or developers ready to go.
Great.
About it.
Any questions for Colette? Sure.
Thanks for all you do, Colette. I know you're a busy person. I follow you all the time.
Well, sorry I
Thank you for
couldn't
your-
be there in person. It's a little hard, but got kind of jammed up today.
We just put our, we'll conclude that in my roundtable. Margaret, would you like to go next?
We're working in the county on the comprehensive plan, so it's late night meeting. Yesterday, joint meeting between the board of supervisors and the planning commission, going through some of the chapters that, the group is putting together, which, housing is one of the giant topics, which I think in our last comprehensive plan, we didn't even have a chapter in housing, so it's, and, we're like maybe a lot of other counties that we are a destination county, so we have that struggle where people are finding it more profitable to put their houses on Airbnbs than it is to fully, rent them to people. So that's just also part of the conversation. So it's interesting from my perspective to, watch our elected leaders, having that conversation and seeing where I can fit in with my organization. And yeah, that is a big deal. And just every day we got a few emergency vouchers, so that's keeping me pretty busy right now. It's exciting too. We can get somebody, who's homeless housed. Pretty exciting. So I get into all kinds of levels of detail.
Right. Any questions here? Were the housing, recommendations, were they helpful in this process, or how was that the experience from?
You mean from the
RHP?
so right now, oh, you mean what RHP has done for?
Yeah, like you said, the comp plan has a new housing chapter now.
Well, they're putting the housing, the
They're putting it in,
together,
yeah.
so how that, they are just finished like the public, information collection stage, all the surveys and all of that, and they're starting to write the comprehensive plan. So like I said, they're putting that chapter in there for sure. And I was not in the conversation, I was just public.
Sure.
So, but Dylan, who's our planner, was like, TJPC put this together for us.
Good.
And, I was like handing it physically out to people. So, I mean, yeah, I think they did. They developed, the organization that we're working with to develop the plan had their own stats, but I think they were definitely in line with what you put together, so I think it's very helpful.
For those of us who were not part of the last planning district commission meeting, I think I've been on it for 11 years. That was the most exciting conversation we had about housing. It was kicked off by Ian. Was that meeting recorded?
Yeah.
I would encourage folks that have not seen it to go to that. That this was a very robust kind of a roundtable discussion around housing. And again, I've been on it for 11 years. We've never had a conversation like that. It was extremely fruitful. It's interesting. Fluvanna County has the opposite opinion. That many people have the opposite opinion of the commission. They think we're telling them what to do instead of them doing that. It's a very different vibe. But the reason I kicked off with talking about this discussion we had was Ned and I are trying to do a roundtable, a roadshow, where we're going to be communicating with the different jurisdictions. I don't know, Ian, I don't know how the scheduling process is going with that, but I think, and I'm just speaking from my perspective, since everybody's kind of in the middle of their comp plans, this is a really good time to get that going on it. And there's just some jurisdictions that just don't understand housing, and we need to help them, or elected bodies anyway, help them through that. But so any update on that?
No, so I mean, it will depend on when y'all are available, and we can, once I have a better sense of what board meetings you guys, I mean, it'll also depend on whether or not we want to do planning commission, focus on the board, those boards.
I don't mean to just.
Yeah.
The board, the state, the elected positions, and then it'll take a couple months to get on their agenda, so we just have to.
Yeah, if we want to do it early, I mean, I know I can just, get some confirmation from y'all, and then we can work on the back end after I schedule, but
Because it's really gonna be more us, we're gonna have to bend to their schedule.
I was just about to say, I
Yeah.
think I would find out, I would do that in first,
Yeah, okay, great.
and then we'll figure it out amongst ourselves.
We're not gonna have options of saying, oh, I'm available on Thursday.
Yeah.
No, do the poll.
Let's go to Louisa County Board of Supers to get there on Thursday.
Yeah, I understand.
We can mind rescheduling the board.
This though is actually one of the things that the communications organization was talking about, was putting together like a template that you guys, either you guys or somebody else from this organization could go, and especially around the election time when new people are on, to do the roadshow, to kind of do the spiel, to get people up and running on what we think are the most important issues.
Well-
So I like that. But we're already in the middle of
Yeah,
it, so
totally.
it's on our list of stuff to do.
Or the start of it, yeah.
Yeah.
We have kind of penciled in this, that I did a presentation at the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference,
I
But-
listened to it.
but, excuse me?
I said, I listened to it.
Oh, thank you, that's nice, nice of you. But the difference is the discussion with Nelson is gonna be different than Flavanna County,
Right.
Charlottesville,
Mhm.
Albemarle County, Louisa, there, everybody's needs and, let's say, political realities are a little different. And we're gonna have to tailor that conversation to what they need, if that makes sense.
It does, but it does follow, there's still kind of like a template that you can.
Yeah, so,
And once you've done it, then you can inform that even more. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's one of those strategies that we thought was important from a communications perspective, that physically go to the different localities and
yeah.
have a chat.
I thought it was just do it and keep saying, and then we're done.
That's right.
Isn't
That's
that
exactly,
how
well,
it's
we needed to write it down in a way that didn't.
That's a joke.
No, but that's a great point though, because if you think about this presentation right now, in the midst of a comp plan update, would look different from a sort of introductory to a new elected official presentation.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I mean, Flavanna County, they don't even know what we do,
Right,
certain elected officials.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at that basic
Right.
level. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's why we were talking about, one of the communications, paths that we need to take was, to make sure that they know what we're doing, so, and that would entail, you or, appropriate representatives from this body actually going to them and having a chat, as I said.
so yeah, I'll start reaching out to clerks, I have all their info, so.
It feels like more of a work session to be the presentation.
I think they're going to dictate,
Yeah.
and the time that they give us is going to dictate what we do with that. Because they might say you get 15 minutes, I mean, our board's that way, we bring things in, you get 15 minutes, you get 15 minutes. But we did our time slot at the conference was like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But then all the conversation after
20
that.
and 30 of that was conversation questions, and then it continued in home agenda.
But I'm excited about the opportunity. I
Yeah.
think it's desperately needed.
That's it.
And one other point to that is, do we want to expand that out beyond the electeds? Maybe depending on looking at, and the communication folks can look at that, maybe a presentation to UVA, a presentation to CAR, or a presentation to whatever, other than the electeds. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, you could expand it into planning commissions and stuff after you did the
You
people.
say beyond just the elected positions, staff, county staff.
Thank you. That's been on my mind.
Yeah.
I just-
Or maybe that's something we could do, like bring the planning staffs in for a session, during the day or whatever, and then everybody could be together, and you guys put together like a new seminar for planning staff on the RHP, and then there's some intermingling from the counties and the regions, and they try to turn each other, which I'm sure they have already, but, that might
Don't be
facilitate
sure,
more
I
conversation.
literally have introduced the planning directors of different jurisdictions to one another,
Oh, yeah.
which just shocked me,
Right, well, I mean.
Not in recent years, because I'm not as engaged with them, but there's less interjurisdictional conversations than
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to stay in my own.
Alamo
Yes.
exceptions of that.
Yeah,
a huge step forward would be having all these officials, elected officials, show up to the March event.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, that would be a huge step forward.
and that's something that, yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all. Yeah,
What's going on? We are hosting a follow-up to a homeless summit, as it were, in December, 1st of December. This was first hosted by the city back in March, actually, as a way to kind of pull together and try to learn about new trends, what was changing during COVID in terms of homeless services and what were the gaps. And so we're pulling people together again to hone in on what some of those takeaways were, where we need to keep focusing as a whole system of care, particularly in response to some funding opportunities that are coming up for art money through the city for homelessness. There's, I think it's, some of the details are still, I'm still learning some of the details, but close to $1 million available for like one-time grants to address homelessness, which would really help us to address some capacity issues, especially around year-round shelter, which we're trying to figure out in the community. So some exciting opportunities there. We're leading into our membership in the Built for Zero campaign, which we're trying to house trying to house homeless veterans. Right now, there's 12 homeless veterans currently in our community that we're around, which is pretty good, all things considered. We used to be around 25, but we're at 12 now, and so we're trying to get that number to 3 by the end of the year. So stay tuned. But we're focusing on that a lot. We're actually going to conference in December. That's all focused on that. And then there's lots of funding opportunities. Housing Trust Fund at the state is a big funding opportunity we're getting prepared for. The city has a number of funding opportunities for homelessness, and then this art money, which is coming sometime in the year. So lots of kind of planning for how to take advantage of these opportunities and address homelessness.
Questions, Raymond?
On the vet side,
Yes.
does the VA help you?
Oh, yeah, huge. I have to give them a lot of credit over the last, I don't know, maybe 7 years. The VA has stepped up in a huge way. The amazing thing is all the veterans, all 12, except 2 who are just aren't interested in services, have housing plan and have a subsidy available for them, just looking for housing. So that means, we're able to, we have resources available.
You just don't have the inventory.
We don't have the inventory, yeah, but a lot of the resources are through the VA, so that's a huge partner.
Yeah, I'm going through some health issues in the VA medical system. It's just unbelievable.
Like in a positive way?
Oh, super positive.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't always the
I
case.
was reluctant to do it, and I should have did it a long time ago.
My dad did the same thing. So, yeah, I'm really pleased that turned around with that for the VA. It's been a huge partner. Yeah. Good. Great. Thanks.
Greg, it's probably that at the next partnership meeting, we'll be looking for the Italy slideshow. Part of the agenda, Ian, we could have that.
Yeah.
What other updates do you have?
The private sector, and then I'll talk about the profit from a new construction point of view. There's still a shortage of sites, which is astounding. There are developers out there that would be interested in developing housing. And sites are in a shortage. In the city, nobody's developing anything because the zoning is in flux and so it's just waiting for that. But even in the counties, there's a shortage of sites. So on the private sector, people are have been standing back waiting for construction costs to stabilize. And in so doing, they're now watching the interest rates climb to intolerable levels in people's lives. Very unfortunate as well. On the not-for-profit, indirectly, the construction costs have really started to back up a lot of local projects, well, not starting, I mean, if you look at Friendship Court, for example, a couple years ago. Even Virginia Housing, they tended to use up more money in previous years, helping projects that had been awarded actually happen because of construction increases, which has diminished the pots in this particular year was particularly bad. And a lot of projects chose not to go after the 2022 money, therefore queuing up theoretically for the 2023 money. And it's unclear how much of that is. And everybody is still uncomfortable as to what housing should cost, including Virginia Housing, who sets a cap on the per unit cost that they're willing to fund, which becomes the budget for those of us designing it. And some of it's not achievable at the moment. And so they're going to have to make adjustments, which means the number of units next year presumably will be less because the cost of units. So there's the whole, and then, the threat of recession is the markets, real estate markets, is on top of interest rates, on top of construction costs. I'm not personally terribly comfortable. I do a lot of hospitality and not enough housing.
About multifamily.
No sites.
So to put the lack of inventory in perspective. So lack of inventory is lots or dirt or actual completed units. Just before the time of great unpleasantness, the Great Recession, we were building nationwide, we were building about 2 million units a year. Immediately after that, it dropped to 300 to 400 and stayed at that level for 10 years. So prior to the pandemic, we were 5 million nationwide, we were 5 million homes, residential units short, just to keep up with demand. Actually got better by 1 million. In the last 6 to 8 months, it jumped up to another, we went back to 5 million. So, the lack of inventory of development sites and completed units is getting worse, not better. And I think I happen to think we are in a recession, not a bending recession. I think we are in one. This is going to be challenging for everybody at this table going the next 12 to 24 months. It's not a pretty picture at all. And it's going to take a long time just to get to balance. 5 million units is a lot.
They were short, you said.
We're short 5 million. And that's why you can't find somebody to house.
See, it trickles down.
Oh,
Yeah, the more affordable houses are not available for the people that need more affordable houses.
We see it go up higher, or is that the?
Well, we can't build new, so, we can't build new, even at market rate. The shortage just keeps moving. And on that, any other questions? Other than that, that was the budget.
I think you should have started off with the Italy pictures. Or ended with the Italy pictures.
I was trying to look up quickly, which of our meeting, we had, so it was our October 5th tomorrow meeting, where we had an economic outlook report. We had hired consultants from Virginia Tech, and they did a whole, the point was for us as we're getting ready for our strategic planning, our 5-year financial outlook, this is kind of the state of Albemarle County and all the economics around it. But they did an analysis looking back of federal, state, local, both Albemarle and Charlottesville, Albemarle, the correct name for the economic region where they look at. But that report was pretty phenomenal. we had a work session, and, you know, I only had one chance to read it before I went to the meeting, and I'm like, oh, this is like, I need to go back and reread this like 10 or 14, you know, multiple times before I get the full value of it. But, you know, we get entrenched in specific housing, specific places, but this was talking about wages and growth and history. There were some interesting things in there that could be of interest or curiosity to folks on this board. So I called out to say that that report would be available. Again, I'm pretty sure that was the October
We're trying to find
5th meeting. It's under economic outlook report. But it should be embedded online at that, through that meeting. You know, if you go on our website, find it, or I can even download it, maybe forward D and send it to the executive committee. But the report is, like, one of the things that stood out to me that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Our wages were stronger than the state and the national level until about 11 or 12, where while we still have wage growth happening, we've now dipped below us and the Stanton area. So somewhere in that 11, 12, coming out of the Great Recession area, while our wages look strong compared to these other levels, they've dropped below and behind. And as I started reacting to, you know, of course, we were talking about how there's low housing supply, there's high prices, rent's high, but with all of it, we have huge income, you know, great income here, great quality of life, all these positives, but it was all directed at the upper end of your income spectrum, all the pluses, which the report, one of my big takeaways on the one read was like, oh man, you know, the people at the other end of the spectrum aren't just struggling, they're really struggling.
It's getting worse.
And the disparity between the two scales. But that, there's something that's nagging me in that historical look, that look back when that widow's wages split from where it's like, what's that story? What's the lesson we learned? So, you know, you could tell that other people were reacting to that report, not to the wage piece, but in similar ways. So what does that mean? What does that mean? So there's a lot of food for thought in there as we try to understand all of these things. In Albemarle, it's about, okay, I forget the language they used, but it was about identifying, they used like a menu of solutions to figure out what your obstacles are moving forward. And that's what we're using this report to try to do as we do our 5-year plan. So that's just the update from Albemarle on that piece. But then, you know, if you're interested, I can make that available to you.
Yeah, I agree.
Are we still behind now?
Yes. Well, I say that, yes, but that's my memory. Because when it flipped, they kept saying, well, it's growing, but we're still now below, if that's my memory. But again, I should be careful saying that, because which meeting was that? The October 5th meeting? That was our economic outlook report, so I'm pretty sure that was the meeting. I'll go find the PDF and get it at the end to send that out, because it'll be embedded in that meeting somewhere, all the information. The other thing, so collect the TJPDC, and at least in Albemarle County, in our legislative packets, are trying to do, or I hope regionally will be collectively going after the General Assembly to allow more virtual meetings for bodies like this that are public but fall under the elected bodies, to just allow virtual meetings to happen. Like I had my brothers, we proved that were able to prove during the pandemic that we could do public meetings, adhere to public notice guidelines, transparency, FOIA concerns during the pandemic. So we should be able to just do this moving forward. We've got to figure it out. Then each elected body, in my opinion, can just figure out what's appropriate for their jurisdiction, and their voters can hold them accountable for it. How that impacts us, or like what you said, you like feel guilty that you can't be here in person. Don't feel guilty, as long as we can do it. It's easier, the virtual participation makes it easier for people to be involved. So all that to say that there's some efforts going on at the local, like at Albemarle and their legislative packet, and we'll be discussing it at the next TJPDC meeting about supporting efforts to make it easier for folks to participate this way. You know, you're in a place that's not necessarily have to adhere to those depending on the meeting, so why wouldn't you be able to participate this way? So, you know, anything from folks outside of you know, an elected official complaining that it's, you know, it makes my life easier to get to these different meetings, if you can advocate or support for that, because that's one of these bills that will be carried at the House, carried at the state level again by the same patron, I forgot the delegate's name. But any type of support for that can be useful, not just for the electeds, but I think of planning commissioners and, you know, all the different committees that people sit on and serve on can make things easier for that participation. Was that October 5?
Yeah.
So it's called the Annual Economic Outlook Report for Albemarle County, and that was the October 5 meeting. It's 89 pages, so it's a heavy lift, but there's lots of graphs and things too.
I'll email that to you.
So that's I've been on that soapbox every chance I get, Colette, so you just gave me another chance to do it. We will be, our agenda is out, so Southwood will be in front of us. We deferred by a month our decision on Southwood, so that's back before our board this Wednesday, so just calling it out. There's a public hearing, it's not coming back before us as a public hearing, so it'll be an action item on the agenda, so we'll be making decisions there in the follow-up to the meeting we had about a month ago. And then the Governor's Virginia Housing Conference is the 16th through the 19th? 16th to the 18th.
Yeah, that's it, right.
And it's in Arlington this year, so I'm just calling that out. I know that myself, Keith, we're going. I know that we're not presenting this year, but we're attending some Ian and Christine and Ruth's going. So if you have them on your agenda, their agenda is out, what their sessions are, things like that. If anybody else from the partnership, maybe we call it out and say that it's there just as if you want to attend.
Yeah.
But just saying that I found it useful to attend the sessions that I attended this last time, and I'm going to be missing the board meeting to go to this conference this year. So I think that's a reasonable reason to support it, because I think it's got some good content.
It's also the same week of the Virginia School Board Association.
This year, how they timed it last year.
Last year, it was one right after the other. And I went to the Virginia one, the housing one virtually, which was so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be in every session. I was trying to win the prize, which I didn't. And you can only do that virtually because you can't physically be in every room. But virtually, I had a couple of screens going and I was listening to every single one.
But you focus on those, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But if somebody was like really dry or, you know, I got the gist of it or whatever, they had it up on, you know, I could watch the slides and mute them and watch another one, but, you know, the key was getting that code at the end of the day. And then there was a whole network of people who were, you know, what was the code on this meeting? What was the code on that meeting? We were all chatting and stuff, so it was, I mean, probably more fun than I've had since high school. You know, in that kind of like a scenario, but anyway, this year I'll do the school board and next year I'll do the Virginia Housing.
I remember presentations on what Norfolk was doing in one of their projects, and the Danville area with employer involved housing.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see what other places are doing.
Yeah.
It's good.
So I'll give a shout out to the man to the right of you, that your presentation was outstanding.
Yeah, thank you.
It was outstanding.
You presenting or doing anything this year?
Unfortunately, I can't make it this year. I'm at a wedding.
Well, the timing's weird. It was a little bit.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So I won't be able to make it, but members from the Haven will be there and some other home service organizations. They host a big COC or, you know, coordinating bodies for home services meeting there at the Virginia Housing Conference.
It was a great presentation.
Next week.
The last thing I'll say is that my own selfish pushes as a supervisor on our board, I've been writing publicly about our housing outlaw not being enforced, so that as redevelopment projects come to us, they're still allowed to get grandfathered in under an old policy of 15% for balance density, as opposed to the 20% as is stated in your policy. So I kind of been pushing everybody to get to that 20% mark as much as I can. Some have. We've had now one project who did step up to do the 20, and one that basically got to the 20, even though the application was for 15, but the numbers actually was about 19%. The holdup is still the incentives conversation that staff will be bringing back to our board to get this incentives piece to rest, so that then we can stop with the grandfathering, and anything that comes in has to adhere to our new housing outlook. And then quickly on the heels of that, I'm hoping that housing trust fund conversations and what that could look like, and begin the discussions of that in outlook. But until this incentive thing is put to rest, we can't even get to that conversation. So I've become incredibly impatient with that on my board. But it's been nice to have now a couple of projects come through where they're aspiring to get the housing out of model versus the old policy. And then the other applicants just have to listen to me complain that they're curious, I guess. But that's what's going on in Outlook. Cool. So that's it. Anything else?
Yeah, just make sure to sign this on the way out. But yeah, I got a list of stuff to do, and I'll reschedule this next meeting for the 30th, and then expect to do a whole once I hear back from Doug Hanson for this. But thanks for everyone for coming.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was diagnosed only a few days ago before she passed. Quick. Yeah, so.